Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show, it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 2 of Bulgasal, Immortal Souls. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're immediately picking up after the events of the first episode. So we have the Bulgasal killing Hawal, but in the process, he becomes the Bulgasal, and he immediately kills her. But then she says, like, right, basically, you don't know what you did, and now, like, all that karma. So, I guess the point is, she got his soul, but because he went out of his way to get revenge, now they're stuck in this perpetual thing. I guess the whole point is not to be so driven revenge, because the whole point is, the Bulgasal, the whole thing is about passing the evil spirit on, and it's about being tied to a grudge. So by killing her and her becoming, like, her dying, it's like, right, we're forever stuck in this cycle yet again. Because she probably did that because he killed her in a previous life and maybe stole her soul. But in the because it's like, he kept asking, why'd you kill everyone? Why'd you kill my son? Why'd you kill my wife? Why'd you kill all these innocent people? Why not just kill me? But it's like, it seems like it's something she can't help it. It's just because once again, he doesn't know what the grudge is that the Bulgasal held against him in the previous life. But now it's like, right, this is all going to start all over again. We'll meet again. I think she says specifically in 600 years. I guess maybe because as a Bulgasal, she's had foresight enough to know what the future really held, like when they would officially meet again. Because the next couple hundred years, there would be some complications along the way. At least we saw in one instance, but I'm assuming over the next couple centuries that same issue kept coming up again and again. Even semi-present day, it came up again. But we'll kind of break that down when we get there. It turns out not everyone died. I guess all the people that were mainly Hwal's people were dead, but the other commander, the other person, high-ranking soldier who doesn't like Hwal is there, and they all see the sword in him, and he pulls it out. They're like, oh my god, he became a monster, and they begin believing like, oh, he sacrificed all his subordinate, his wife and his son, just so he could become the Bulgasal. That's what this is all about. To be fair, they want to think the worst of him, because it's like, right, why else would you become a monster? Not that he tried to do the thing he set out to kill it and end up getting cursed in the process. Like, no. They assumed like this was the only way this was ever going to turn out, because you were cursed by the Bulgasal. You were cursed, so you becoming a monster was inevitable, essentially. And so in the process, like, he's even on top of, like, his son. He's holding his son, and, you know, he's still being driven by the bloodlust and wanting to devour his son. Then everyone proceeds to stab him, but it does nothing, because you can't kill him. He's immortal now, and they just let him go. So they go back to tell, I believe it's the general's name, was it, Diuk, I want to say. And so they try to tell him, and obviously he's so frustrated because now his son and his grandson's dead. His daughter and his grandson is dead. Plus now his son's become the very monster, because he kept telling his Hwal over and over again, it's like, no. The Bulgasal isn't real. You're not cursed. And now he's become the very monster he set out to kill. And in the process, they plan to, it's like, right, if we can't kill him, there's been a royal court order for us to basically slice his body to pieces and bury him. That way he can't pull himself back together. So, but the general stays at the bottom of the mountain by the well, and he's like, right, I knew that if I was alone, you'd come to me. And so he was like, right, Hwal gets in front of him and is like, kill me. He's like, I threw myself off a cliff. No matter what I do, I can't die. So the only way that, like, I need you to kill me. And we see that his tears have been, instead of normal tears, he cries tears of blood now. And so the general wants to kill him, but he's like, right, tell me, answer me. Like, did you sacrifice my daughter and your son just for the sake of becoming this? Are you the reason they're dead? And did you do it with your own hands? He's like, yes, I did. He's like, if I hadn't dragged them into this, none of this would have happened. My need on trying to, like, kill the Bulgasal, my need for revenge and trying to get back at her, but also it's like his need, because he let her live is the main thing he was saying. Because I let her live, because I felt sympathy, because she saved me all those years ago, because I didn't just straight up kill her then, this happened. So their death is on my hand. But when the time came, the general decided not to kill him because he's like, right, the fact is you feel what you feel means that you were human. You can never become a monster because of who you were. And I still believe you there. So just go into hiding, because if you show yourself, they will kill you. They'll at least dismember you enough that you'll be stuck in a state that you can't pull yourself back together. But that officer who doesn't like Hual shows up and stabs the general because it's like, right, this is your fault for letting someone lowly outside of all this come into this. And in that turn, like, Hual got pissed and attacked him. He was about to kill him until the general stopped him. It's like, right, you are not a monster. You are human. So basically, don't prove that they think that they know what you are. I know who you really are at your heart of it. Even as you are now, I know who you really are. Don't prove them right. And so Hual leaves with the general, but despite everything, it's like, right, I need to save you. But it's like the general's like, no, my time is up. And he makes Hual promise him, like, right, never drink human blood. You need to hold on to being human. And in the process, Hual is like, right, I will. I won't. I promise you, I won't. Yes, father. And then he says, like, right, take me to my daughter. The sad thing is, the relationship Hual had with Achon is the same way the general had with Saul, his daughter. Because it's like, because of her visions and stuff like that, it wasn't just other people that kept her at a distance. Even he did too. He's like, right, I wasn't there to comfort her when her mom died or even when her daughter died. Like, I want to ask her for forgiveness. And, he dies. And he makes sure to bury all of them. And the old lady from the village makes her way to him, to Hual, and tells him, like, what happens. Like, right, he became the Bulgasal because the previous Bulgasal stole his soul, and now, like, she's going to be she was made human again, and now that he killed her as a human, she will reincarnate as a human. But no matter how long it takes, Hual plans on tracking her down and ending this once and for all. It's like, right, it's like she, like, will know what it's like to be trailed by the Bulgasal. That's why I'm like, I think they're stuck in a perpetual loop, because she talked about trying to break the cycle. Even in present day, she's trying to break the cycle. So I think it is a cycle that happens over and over and over again, and they keep finding themselves in this situation where it's kind of, I think, back and forth. Like, that's why they're so tied. Like, we have no idea what started all this, because we're in the middle of that story of this whole Bulgasal thing, of why Hual was cursed as a boy, like, why she did what she did. Because part of me was almost wondering, too, does she completely lose control at night? Because the moment day came around, to be fair, that's when the soul was coming into her. So it seemed like, anytime we've ever seen her during the day, typically, not always, but typically, she was more in control. That's why I'm like, I think she was trying to change things, but something triggered inside of her. Well, I guess it makes sense now in the grand scheme of things, because it is what I thought. The monster inside, that monster cursed his soul. It's like, right, I know what your soul is now. So it probably, in some shape or form, took control of... that's what I'm guessing, because like I said, her eyes glazed over red, like that creature that could control people's minds. But she never brought that up, so I don't know if that was just her, or was that monster in control of her. Either way, we immediately skip some time later. Hual has kept up his promise of not drinking human blood, but he paints a picture of the previous Bulgasal, and obviously it's around the time of Japan's invasion. He saves a mother and potentially her daughter. Obviously they're immediately like, he's a monster, and run. But he feeds, but not on human blood. He feeds on a horse's blood to replenish his strength. 3 years later, he comes across a traveler who's like, that picture you drew of that woman? I've seen it before. Tracks down the guy who drew it. Turns out that guy, knows exactly who the woman is, but he already killed her. I'm like, that... I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. It's like, she's already been reincarnated and died. In fact, she was murdered. And it turns out that the person in particular who murdered her was a monster, or was a monster in a previous life. So I'm like, now, what I wasn't sure about, and maybe I'm just an idiot because I'm going to have a hard time following how this whole reincarnation thing works, man. I know people talk about, you know, like when it comes to reincarnation, remembering previous lives, but it's like, this goes to a whole other level, especially because you have monsters reincarnating. The thing is, that guy who was the killer, I don't know if he reincarnated as it seemed like, because Hawal was like, oh, you reincarnated as a human, but then he starts showing monster characteristics. His eyes, his teeth shifted. So that's why I'm like, upon remembering his previous life, does he become a monster again? Is it just he appeared to be a human because he doesn't remember being a monster? It's just, it's been there. He's like, right, I don't remember, I don't know why, but it's just like, once I saw her, I felt the need to kill her. And that's when it's like, right, you came after her because my soul was cursed. Because that monster I killed was like, oh, I remember your soul now, and I'm going to come and get you. It's like, right, you're a monster I killed, and you weren't trying to go after her. You were going after my soul. Because basically, it's locked in on so it's multiple monsters have locked in on his signature. Because he had brought it up of like, he had talked to his dad last episode asking, will all the monsters come after him, like, you know, karma-wise? And it's like, interestingly enough, it seems like that's going to be the case. And even the monster was like, oh, like, if I eat your flesh, if I kill you, will I become the new Bulgasal? Will I have eternal life? And he's like, but Hawal was like, no. The fact is, like, this need for blood living on like this isn't, like, something you should envy. This itself is hell. And Hawal ends up killing him and even, like, ripping out, like, an organ or something. He's like, right, don't come back again. You come back again to try and kill her, I will kill you again. And he smashed something, so because I think that's supposed to be, because the way they cut to it later on, it seems like that's Jomagu. Like, I guess at some point in time he killed Jomagu, and I guess that thing that was on the floor that he stabbed the ended all was like the third eye or whatever. I think that's what that was supposed to be indicative of, but that's why I'm like, it threw me for a loop, because it's like, wait, monsters are reincarnating too? I was like, that really puts a little bit of a sting on your trying to, like, end its grudge and kill her, you know, for taking your soul and also killing your entire family, your wife and your son. So there's that. I mean, also, like, as a slight byproduct, if you had never made him into the Bulgasal, his father wouldn't have gotten killed either. So, and then we skip to 2006. So it's like, oh, isn't it going to be? Is the show only going to take place in 2006, or is it going to take place even further? But later on shows, like, it is present day, as in 2021. But first, we stop off at 2006, where Hawal runs into a detective. It's like, because it's like, oh, like, why do we always have to meet up at these crazy spots? He's like, yeah, I'm not a very social, I have a social phobia. I don't like being around a lot of people, because I guess it's like, if the more people he's around, the more likely he is to drain them of their blood. But it turns out the detective he's talking to get him to look for the former Bulgasal, that guy is the guy his father left him to. So I guess he has a soft spot for this guy in particular, because that guy gave him something and was like, right, leave and don't come back to the village, like something's happened. So despite everything, the old man kind of took care of him. So that's why I guess he's like, right, if I'm going to trust anyone and you do this in a profession, so I'm going to pay you to look for her. He's got pictures of her, like, older as well as younger, because it's like, right, I have no idea how long ago she reincarnated, so she's going to look like either one of these two, or somewhere in between. Interestingly enough, we find out that which, once again, I didn't know reincarnation could work like this. The former Bulgasal soul has been basically reincarnated in then two different people. It seems like Song-un has the actual soul, but Song-yeon, her twin sister, has all the memories, because she has the scar and the memories, but it doesn't seem like Song-un, like, has it. So it's almost like Song-un is the soul, whereas Song-yeon is the body and the memories, which is interesting. Because they talk about, like, Song-yeon being kind of weird, like, because Song-yeon was around her friends, and she's like, oh, that car's stalking me. But they're like, oh, you're being crazy. You're being paranoid. Oh, it drives away. And then the car was following her later, and it seems like it's Hawal trailing after her. And so she gets home, and then her sister hears about someone falling. It's like, did he see your face? It's like, yes, we got to get out of here. Left their baby sister behind, and when her mom gets back, it's like, where's your sister? It's like, they left somewhere. And so she's running, and because Song-yeon seems like the crazy one, once again, because she has all the visions and stuff, and then they run into the guy on the bus, and he was like, oh, do I recognize you? And it's like, right, that monster yet again has found you all these centuries later, because it's like, oh, but like I said, it goes to Song-un, and it's like, oh, like, I smell your soul. And so that's why I'm like, does it, like, but at that moment, like, he's being held back by the other people. They're like, yo, dude, what's wrong with you? You're crazy. But that's why I'm like, he's not a monster yet. Like I said, maybe you have to remember your entire previous life as a monster to fully awake, because maybe it's buried somewhere deep inside of you, and then maybe it's upon remembering it, like having memories of the life you currently live plus your previous lives, maybe it kind of mutates your body, hence you become a monster. Then once again, I'm still trying to get a good grasp on the rules of this reincarnation, just because the previous dude looked like a monster, or at least started developing as a monster, even though he already had monster tendencies, because he was like, oh, like, he killed people. It definitely killed the former Bulgasal in her new reincarnation at the time. That was like, what, 1596, when Hual found out about her being dead in 1596, but still. And then, like, Song Yeon takes her all the way. Well, first they stop by some house. Like, I'm like, how do you have access to that house? Like, whose house is that? Is that an old house of theirs, or is that something Song Yeon had set up a long time ago? It's kind of a safe haven, or maybe it's just like an abandoned house that they slept at. But obviously, Song Yeon is like, you're crazy, sis. I did, like, all this Bulgasal stuff is just crazy. I want to go home. But it's like, no, we can't go home. If you had just worn the mask and covered your face and never left like I told you to. But she's like, you're crazy. Everyone's right about you. You're insane. And they make their way to, apparently, Song Yeon's sister's place. So I'm assuming at some point in time, before the former Bulgasal became the Bulgasal, she had a sister. She had a normal life. And so I'm assuming, like, that sister died at some point in time. And, because that's why she's like, oh, sis, my sister. And even Song Ona's like, wait, what? And they were having a private conversation. So once again, it's so interesting how casual, like, a lot of people are remembering their, like, reincarnations, because it's like, how is this possible? Like, had they met previously? Well, all she said was like, oh, I'll be back. So it seems like this was her first time seeing her sister back. So I guess it's like, right, what is you, essentially your soul, like, I guess it emanates enough that, like, people, kindred spirits, like, you know, who've lost each other upon these reincarnations. I mean, that also speaks volumes. It's like, her sister was reincarnated years before her because she's older, but maybe that's also indicative of that Song Yeon or Song Un, like, whatever the case may be, constantly get killed before they live too long into their lives, why they never, you know, or maybe, like, her cycle just happened to end previously, why they're so young. Like I said, there's so many layers to it. But Song Yeon wants to end this once and for all, because she says there is one way to end it, and it's to basically, I think the sword that she used to draw out his soul all those years ago, the sword that made the mark on her that was used on her as well, she has to find that, and that's the only way to kill the Bulgasal. But it's like, right, once you do that, well, I guess because you are the wielder of his soul, maybe that gives you the weapon. Because I was about to say, a soul can't be the answer, because, like, there's plenty of people with souls who attacked him and they didn't do anything. But maybe it's like the Bulgasal has to be killed by someone wielding their soul. I don't know. But also, like, the sword is significant because that's the moment of, like, him dying and becoming the Bulgasal, because his soul went into her through that sword. So it channels that, so it has to be found again. But, I mean, it's been 600 years, specifically 600 years later on, so it's like, how do you go about tracking something like that down over the years? Because you'd assume the last person who had it was Hual, but not unless he left it somewhere and eventually someone else picked it. Song-gun sadly didn't want to listen to her sister, though. The moment she woke up in the middle of the night, you're like, oh, she's not going to listen, even though you want, because, once again, understandably, because it's like all this monster talk, Bulgasal, it's like, no, you're crazy, sis, and she didn't believe her. Called her mom, I was like, oh, is Hual going to follow your mom to you? But it's like, no, just kept waiting outside, waited for you to come. It's like, oh, rather than trying to follow you to wherever you're going, how about I just wait for you to come back, because you will. Because the mom brought Song Un back, and because Song Yeon had returned home because she was, like, waiting for him, like, right, come after me, because she wanted to end things herself. But sadly, her mom, because she even said like, right, you're not my sister. So that's why I'm like, they're born as twins, but I guess it's supposed to be, that's why I'm like, I'm confused, because it's so interesting, because I guess she's more, it's like, she said like, Sung on, that's your mom, not mine. I'm not your actual daughter. We were born as twins, but like, I guess she has the memories and stuff like that. But so what does that make Sung? I guess she's like, I'm the former Bulgasal. Sung On is something else entirely, because yes, she has Hwal's soul, but she's someone else entirely. Only Sung Hyun, Sung Hyun Yeon is the actual former Bulgasal. And it turns out the reason why she was fighting so hard for this is because she said this is her final chance. She won't reincarnate. Well, I'm like, is there actually a limit to how much you can reincarnate? Or I've never heard that before, there being a limitation on it. But maybe her circumstances are a little bit different. Maybe because she like constantly gets killed and reincarnated. So maybe after this, her soul burns up, so it makes it impossible. But maybe it's also because they are twins, she got the soul, so it's not like I'm going to be able to reincarnate with it. If I die, this is it, because not that she doesn't have a soul, but it's not that one, so her role in all of this will like kind of get removed from it, because if Song Un dies, she's the one that's going to reincarnate with the soul. But it's like, because that's what I'm still like, why does Song Yeon get the memories and Song On only get the soul? Like, it's just, I'm so, because there's a lot there, but there's a lot not being explained, and I'm trying to understand, like, how does it work? I've never heard, like, that's why I'm like, twins being born from a soul being reincarnated is kind of interesting. I've never known, like, it's never crossed my mind until now to think about, what would happen there? What would happen with triplets or whatever? Like, questions like that. But Song Yeon was trying to along with their mom, was trying to protect Song-on and trying to like find a way for her to escape, but like trying to bust a hole in the wall to get to the next room, but it was like, right, it's blocked off on the other side. And so Song Yeon hit her sister. It's like, right, you have to live. Don't trust anyone, because you never know who might be a reincarnated monster after your soul. So don't trust anyone. Live and find a way to kill the Bulgasal, And gave her sister her mask, and it's like, that's the only thing she has left to remember Song Yeon. So her mom and Song Yeon end up dying. Now, my thing is, I don't think that was Hwal who did it. Even though they make it seem like it is, I don't think it's him. One, because whoever did it must have drunk enough. Well, because they ripped into them, but if they were going to kill them, they would have drained them of blood, wouldn't they? Because this whole thing is about drinking blood. But he had blood on his mouth and everything, but I think he would have avoided that, because granted, maybe that's supposed to also be indicative of, we don't know that entire 600 years. Yeah, we saw in like 1593 that he drunk the blood of like a horse or whatever, but that doesn't mean he kept up with it in the next like 400 plus years at that point, so. But I think that's supposed to mislead you, because back in 1596, when he talked to that monster that was reincarnated, it was like, right, there was a dark-haired guy that said the same thing. So it's like, once again, either that guy was a monster, or he's the other, because I think there's another immortal at play here, or maybe he's just someone that's reincarnated, maybe not necessarily an immortal, but someone else is after the former Bulgasal, or rather, like, the person who has Hwal's soul, like, they're after him for some reason. So there is another player in play here, and I think that might be, because that's why I'm like, because if it was Hwal, why would they go through the trouble of covering up his face like that? It's like, it's meant to make you think it was him, but it wasn't. I don't think it was. Even though he was outside the house, like, I think by the time he got in there, everything was already said and done. Because we did get glimpses of his face, but that's what I'm like, I think a lot of that's meant to throw you off. Like, maybe it's just straight clear, like, nah, this is it, you idiot. I'm calling myself the idiot. I don't know. I just feel like it just didn't seem like that was him. Also, because this is actually throwing me for a loop, because I thought Hwal and that, woman that was a former Bulgasal, like, I thought they had a love story, which maybe that's tied into maybe because that, once again, kind of a spoiler because of the synopsis, but like I've got no hint of a romance, but maybe it's a thing of eventually it will become one that maybe he will like try and protect her. It's no longer about revenge. It's about things being different this time, them breaking the cycle once and for all. Sadly, Song Yeon and their Song Eun's mom ended up dying protecting. I don't think she ever really got a good glimpse of his face. I mean, she was so terrified and he was so scary. So when the police are asking her questions, she keeps her sister's words in mind and she doesn't trust anyone. And Hwal ends up showing up at the hospital at one point, but she's already gone. Because that's also the thing, too. Like, to be fair, the previous Bulgasal ended up killing so many people and ultimately ended up coming after killing Hwal last, after killing all his subordinates, his wife, and his child. So it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to be like, oh, of course Hwal would end up killing the sister and the mom just to get to Song-eun. But Song-eun found, like, because her youngest sister was staying at a friend's, so she picked her up, went back to Song-yeon's, like, reincarnated sister, and stayed there. But it took Hwal like 15 years to track them down that far. But apparently, they left at some point in time. Like, I guess, like, they lived there for a while, but eventually maybe monsters kept showing up, or at the very least, because it seemed like it was almost implying like they were living there for a while. But the old lady that found Hwal like at the place was like, yeah, they left in a hurry, almost like they owed a loan shark some money. So his journey like continues. It's like, right, it took him 15 years to get that far, so he's got to continue tracking her down. And Sung-eun, I'm curious about her sister, and is that the lady who's kind of like pseudo a grandma to her sister's sister. I wonder if she's still alive at this point in time, 15 years later, which is now 2021. But we see that she's living a life, and she's like, oh, I'm married, I have a husband, which I'm like, is that her lying, trying to make sure that no one ever gets a hint or sense of who she is, or is she actually married, and it like, you know, because she's like, oh, like, I may not look it, but I'm married and stuff like that, and I'm like, huh. It felt like that was kind of a lie, but why lie, you know? Like I said, maybe it's like, right, if you kind of emanate this lie, and if you believe it so much, the people around you won't be asking questions of like, oh, because if you're alone, then I guess that makes you a little suspicious or something like that. I don't know if that's supposed to be an indicative thing of like, right, you don't want to be older and not even old, but like older and not married, because I think that's frowned upon in some cultures. I feel like specifically in Asian culture, because it's like, oh, when you're going to get married, when you're going to have kids. That's the type of questions that kind of get really pushed on you in the Asian culture. I think it's like that for both guys and girls. But she had an anniversary. She has like, oh, there's a special day coming up, and they're like, oh, your wedding anniversary, and she's like, no, and I was like, the day your mom and sister died, huh? And it is, because their home is being, well, the apartment building or whatever that they lived in is getting demolished, so she wanted to come back, but she couldn't bring herself to come back before now. It's like, this was her last chance, because it shows that at the very least, that room, no one's lived in it, because there's still blood splattered against the wall. So, but for her, she tries to like, right, Sung-yeon, I couldn't tell you back then, but the thing I was trying to say is, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not believing you. I'm sorry for calling you insane, but I've done what you've asked me to do. I've lived my life. I haven't trusted anyone. And she's like, I don't remember the last thing that you told me. Now, I don't know whether it's the line that we saw, the whole like, find a way, the thing to kill the Bulgasal, you'll find it. You'll just have to, like, you'll know it when you see it. We saw that line again, but I don't know if it's supposed to indicate that line she heard, but not, because I don't know if it's supposed to indicate there was stuff afterwards that she just doesn't remember because she was so scared and freaked out, and just, it's been so long now. Because, you know, it's just like, that's sad, because that, you know, that regret lays with her. You know, her sister's a constant reminder, like her little sister's a reminder of like, right, our entire family's going because I didn't listen to my sister. Like, who knows how things would have played out if she had listened to Song-yeon. I mean, Song-yeon would have probably ended up dead either way. But like I said, I don't think it's Hwal, but he's definitely on the other side of that door, and just in that moment, like, he's on the other side trying to get in, she's on the other side inside, and here they are, these people, centuries apart, they find their way back to each other, separated simply by a door. So fate's always funny and interesting how it plays out in this world. So it's definitely going to be interesting because I think, once again, the reincarnated monster angle is going to continue to be a bigger and bigger thing as the season progresses, especially considering they're all after Hual's soul, which is in Song-un, who's trying to find a way to kill the Bulgasal. But like I said, I don't think it's Hual. I'm probably going to have egg on my face, but it's just like they went out of their way to hide his face during the attack, so I don't think it was him. Now, whether it was another monster pretending to be him or them just assuming it was him, because that was the biggest threat, like Song-yeon. I don't know how much she remembered of her memories of like why because when we saw her memories, she was looking at her scar, and then she remembers him stabbing her and killing her. But I think to perpetuate this cycle they're in, they only remember like, right, you hold a grudge against me. I don't remember why though. I just remember you stabbing me, and now we're in this perpetual cycle. Like she probably only remembers up to her becoming human again. So as the Bulgasal, like all things in between then, like are kind of lost or everything. Maybe the moment he became the Bulgasal, she lost all her memories of her time. So her life only includes all the moments she was human, pre becoming a Bulgasal and post being a Bulgasal, like just being human. So maybe that's how that works. I don't know. Like I said, I'm interested to dive into this because there's a lot being thrown at you, but there's still a lot of questions on understanding how this whole thing operates. There's a lot of stuff that is popping up in Korean on the TV. I don't know what that is. It's not like there's not little subtitles to translate it, so I don't know if it's like maybe it's indicative of like maybe it's related to some terminologies that get used over the course of the show, that it's like, oh, like here's like some like textbook that, because like manga and manhwa will do that from sometimes, like, oh, they'll reference, like, for example, like in a manga might be like, oh, itadakimatsu, like kind of giving you an idea of what that means. It's like, oh, thank you very much when you're about to eat, thank you for this food. So like there might be a note in a manga or like a manhwa or a webtoon, obviously like saying like, oh, here's like this, in the case of a manhwa or a manga, like if someone translated, it's like, oh, here's a little note for something that maybe you as an English reader might not be aware of. That's something that's based around the Korean culture of like, oh, here's this very specific Korean dish. Oh, this is what maybe that's the type of stuff that's popping up. I don't know. So like I said, we'll have to wait and see where all this takes us. The next episode will be Saturday. Once again, this is so weird. I have not experienced this week to week thing or rather weekend to weekend thing with Netflix. So it's a little weird. I mean, you could always make anything a week to week thing if you just watch everything one episode at a time. I've never done that, but I do typically watch things like in chunks over the course of a couple of days, just because the way I do my reviews now and everything kind of puts me in a position that I have to do it like that. But tangents and all that aside, I'm still excited to see where the next episode takes us. Once again, this is a fairly lengthy season, but like I said, we're getting 2 episodes at a time, so it's only going to run for 8 weeks. So we still got 7 more weeks. So it's going to be interesting to see where episode 3 and 4 take us Saturday and next Sunday. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.